Well, folks, thanks for joining us again. As you can see, I'm in temporary headquarters today, not my usual studio, doing a lot of traveling down in the United States right now. And thanks again for tuning in to our American viewers and listeners. Great to have you with us, and also in Canada. And good to see the numbers increase as people seem to be liking the approach we're taking here at Stockwell Day-to-Day News, trying to pick items behind the news, some of the things that drive the news and drive the headlines, things that you wouldn't necessarily see in mainstream media. So thanks for being a part of that. Thanks for the comments, getting some good advice there. And if you've got words either for or against the type of things we're talking about here, send in those comments. It helps us improve, or if anything else, sharpen our presentations. So in Canada, of course, the budget discussions are still very much top of mind. And it appears, and as I predicted, I said, I don't think the government is going to fall on this. Even last week before the budget came out, there was all kinds of talk about the non-confidence vote. The government will fall. I said at that time, I don't know everything that's going on behind the scenes, but I don't think the government is going to fall on this. It seems to be that's the way it's going. I don't think it's going to happen. There's a couple of subtexts that are emerging, and in terms of a couple of subtexts, we're talking about two people that are getting a lot of attention, two members of parliament, conservative members of parliament. You've been following the one, and we've talked about it. MP d'Entremont from Nova Scotia, the only conservative elected in Nova Scotia in the last election, and he got elected by like about 1% over the Liberal challenger, and he has, of course, defected to the Liberals. It's gotten a lot of people very upset. So that's happening there. That gives one more critical vote for the Liberals if a non-confidence vote comes up. And kind of an interesting one that's emerged is MP Genereux. Now this individual, this MP, was elected in Edmonton, and also very close election with the Liberals. So it makes you wonder, what are they looking at in terms of betraying their party and betraying their party leader? But in this case, MP Genereux is saying he's resigning. So that was the announcement that came out and shocked a lot of people, and others it didn't shock. But now he says he is resigning, but probably not till sometime in the spring. Definitely one of the stranger resignations that any of us have ever heard of. We're kind of wondering if he's confused or if he's being offered various goodies. Nobody seems to know for sure. Look, I respect anybody in public office who's feeling the pressures of office and needs to spend more time with family. That is a constant challenge to anybody in elected life. So I'm not wanting to presume anything there. But saying you're going to resign and saying maybe sometime in the spring definitely raises some interesting questions. And the question on the whole democratic process itself is really coming into view because of these two individuals. Because on a point of view of democracy, if you run for election and you get elected, that means the constituents, or at least most of them who voted in your constituency, were expecting that you were going to serve them through the particular party in which they got elected. And so I always ask people when they're considering about switching parties, especially right after an election, have they consulted their constituents? Have they gone to them and said, this is what you want me to do? And if not, then I would suggest that you don't just switch to another party, but in fact you resign, and then you say you're going to run again, because when you resign in the Canadian system, that triggers a by-election just in your constituency, and then you can take that question to the people who elected you. So you get elected as a conservative, you say you're going to jump ship to the Liberals. Actually, many people are saying the more integrity would be shown if you said, I'm going to step down, it's going to cause a by-election, I'm going to run for the other party, and give my constituents the chance to say if they see me as a traitor or not, or if this is something they want me to do. So a little bit of democracy coming under fire there because of these two individuals. People are talking a lot about the budget, as they should, and I'm sure you're doing a lot of your own research. Let me just say, I like to take main items and main headlines and kind of look at some of the cultural components driving it behind the headline. So in the budget, the Federal Police Force of Canada, the RCMP, of which I was once in charge when I was Minister of Public Safety, $1.7 billion is being directed to them so that they can hire 1,000 more RCMP officers across the country. And there is a vacancy rate of 7.7%, which is not small and creates problems in terms of security and safety and how our streets can be safe and our homes can be safe when there is a deficiency of police officers out there. But they say this is going to help in terms of recruiting. I'm going to suggest that there are some factors at play when it comes to either police officers wanting to quit or young officers, young men and women who are thinking about joining but are dissuaded from that. And anytime a government seems to be not really supportive of the police forces, the police itself in various constituencies, and anytime a government seems to be, and for lack of a better word, I'm going to say soft on crime, not doing something especially about, and we're talking here always about serious repeat violent offenders, culturally Marxist media and culturally Marxist liberals and academe always take a so-called, when they hear about a so-called tough on crime approach, they say, oh, that's just a government trying to be mean on disadvantaged people. No, we're talking about serious, repeat, violent offenders. And liberals seem to go very soft on those. And when a police force senses there's not going to be support in public, in the media, and from government, when they are there simply enforcing the laws that are in place, that's very discouraging in terms of present officers and those thinking of joining. And all surveys show that any time within a police force that the negative side and negative points of view of what we call woke culture, where people get promoted not on base of merit, but on a basis of all kinds of other factors that in this case don't have a whole lot to do with keeping criminals off the street. So the combination of lack of support or lack of sense of support from politicians and from the media, along with officers being overly burdened with all the issues that come with woke culture, fix those two things, and you will deal with the problem of vacancy rates in police forces. Failing that, you're going to have a tough time. By the way, the same applies to military recruiting. So hoping elected people keep that in mind. Just crossing the border, which was not a problem. No extra hoops that we had to jump through. Mind you, we came through by air. We understand if you're crossing the border into the U.S. by land, you're going to have your picture taken and other things will be happening. If you're offended by that, you should be aware your picture's being taken every day, all day long, 24/7, everywhere you go. Having said that, very interesting to hear discussion here about Zoran Mandami, of course, and his election, and we've been talking a lot about that. And the aspect that's really catching people's attention, this man who is an avowed extreme socialist and a supporter of extreme elements of Islamist activities, and wants to take over in true form all forms of, or many forms of production and distribution. So doctrinaire socialism, if not strong ties also with communist tendencies, he's had the remarkable capability through this whole campaign of never being seen without his smile on, never being caught with his smile down. No matter how tough the question was, that smile was always there. And it's being pointed out even by mainstream media, the smile seems to have, right in the immediate time after his election, seems to be not as prevalent all the time. And he seems to be taken a few times where he's putting on his angry face, putting on his mad face in terms of facing opponents. I don't know if that's going to be a permanent change or if it's just a little bit of a reprieve and release for him, not having to plaster on the smile 24/7. That's something that's been interesting on the cosmetic side. The other thing that's been noticed right in the day and the days following is extreme celebration with the Islamic and Muslim community in New York. Thousands coming on the street and blocking traffic, etc., by putting down their prayer mats and having mass prayer meetings. And very concerning just yesterday to see roving bands of individuals shouting various Islamic phrases. Now, whether all these people are Muslim or not, we don't know, but lighting fires and tearing down American flags. So we don't know if that's a sign of things to come or not, but just some of the initial observations that are being made following the election to the financial capital of the world by one of the strongest socialists in the United States. The other thing we're noticing, and has been noticed for some time even before the election, is the huge movement of not just real estate, but people interested in real estate in states like Florida and Texas, and wanting to get out of town, to get out of Dodge, to get out of New York City. We'll see if that is going to continue. In Florida, they're so concerned about the influx of people fleeing New York City, and also in Texas, they're talking about putting a tariff, charging people to move from those states to the present states, because anytime you have a massive influx of people, that's always, there's a good sign to that, because it's saying that people like your policies and that people sense that they're going to have some opportunity and a breath of fresh air. But it's also when those kind of influxes happen quickly, it's tremendous pressure on real estate markets, on infrastructure and other things. So that's the initial thing that we're seeing, is this movement out of New York, as people anticipate, just by studying basic and simple history, the outfall of socialist policies is always negative, always creates more poverty, and always puts more people in line for assistance and dependent on the government. With President Trump, there's always things that happen on a daily basis that capture people's attention. And one thing that it's been reported, but is not quite grabbing the headlines as much as others, he's done some work in negotiating with the pharmaceutical industry so that these wonder drugs, weight reduction drugs, or weight control drugs, whatever you want to call them, like Ozempic, and there I said the word, I'm not advertising for them, I don't get any feedback, I don't get any money. But along with Robert Kennedy Jr., President Trump's health secretary, of course, the problem of obesity has really been able to be highlighted. The issue of obesity has been one which over the last few years, if you even raise the issue, you're accused of trying to shame people. But there's no shaming that's intended here. From everything I can read and see, obesity leads to so many other morbidity health issues, whether we're talking about diabetes, whether we're talking about all kinds of other associations, heart problems that come with obesity. So it's just a matter of, they are looking at the stats and seeing that the reduction in the amount of lives that can be saved, but also the reduction by the billions of dollars in health costs if people became less obese, is really a factor. And so there you go. You can get your Ozempic and other products by the time this is through for about half the price as they're being presently made available by the pharmaceutical companies. On the legal side, and people always are keeping an idea on the Supreme Court in the United States, there's a concern that's more than just bubbling to the surface that the Supreme Court might be looking again at the same-sex legislation, where marriage now, of course, we've known for into a couple of decades now, same-sex marriage being legalized, and there's media reporting that the Supreme Court is reconsidering that. Well, that's not actually what is happening. What's gotten people's attention, if you will recall, back in 2015, there was a woman by the name of Kim Davis. She was a county clerk officer in Kentucky, and a gay couple had approached her for a marriage license. You can get married in a civil ceremony in the United States, just as you can in Canada. And she said because of her own particular beliefs, she wasn't able to grant that particular license. And this is, of course, after same-sex marriage had been recognized. But she said this was a religious right that she was dealing with, and she did not have to recognize same-sex marriage. So she was actually taken to court by various commissions in Kentucky and in the U.S. She was fined for that. She was found guilty of how she was handling her office, and there were some not insignificant financial penalties to go with that. So she began to appeal that in courts, in the courts, not the same-sex legislation, but the fact that she was being fined, the fact that she was being punished for expressing her view. And that has worked its way all the way up to the Supreme Court. So right now, as we speak, in one of their, what's called their private conferencing, right now, the Supreme Court of the United States is looking at whether they're going to allow the case to be heard. This isn't the case on same-sex marriage itself. It's the case that involves her being fined, her being penalized for taking the position that she had. But people are worried that if she's successful in getting these charges dropped and the financial penalties dropped, that this will then lead to the whole issue of same-sex marriage up for reconsideration. Frankly, I think the chances of that happening are very remote, very small, but we'll see what happens. And the nice thing about this one, they're indicating, the justices are indicating we may know as early as November 10th or 11th whether they're going to take up looking at the case. So a little bit of hysteria developing there, but that's the state of affairs. Another thing to be watching, and this one is, you're going to say, well, look, this is a few years out. Why are you raising this issue? I want to raise the issue of something called COP30. This is the climate agenda, folks, out of the United Nations. And in 2030, they'll be celebrating 30 years of bringing these environmental relation issues to the United Nations, and the United Nations coming up with all kinds of limitations and goals and targets. And they're calling it COP30, but already it has begun. You are seeing more and more, even today, check through, scan the media headlines, the new term developing, or relatively new to mainstream individuals, and it's called climate justice payments. Get a hold of that, climate justice payments. And this is where one of the things they're going to be considering is what countries should be penalized because they're doing well, and poor countries are not doing well and may be suffering from the excess carbon emissions of the countries that are doing well. And they're looking at a system whereby different countries can be fined or forced to make climate justice payments. That language always kind of makes me nervous. I don't know about you in terms of justice payments. Sometimes they are legitimate, sometimes they are not. But keep an eye on that. It's going to be happening in Brazil, in the city of Belém. And the backdrop, of course, will be the Amazon forest area. And right now, the president, we'll see if he's still president then, we don't know. But Lula da Silva, those of you who follow politics in South America will know that he has been the president of Brazil in the past. He was found guilty of corruption and actually spent time in jail. He's an avowed and intense socialist, and he will certainly even now be leading the cause towards COP30. And the other reason I raise it now is that submissions and the planning for, there's going to be the summit itself where world leaders will gather. And then in parallel to that will be all kinds of NGOs and other groups that will be making their presentations. So if you are concerned about climate issues, whether you believe that climate destruction is imminent, we're all going to die maybe before COP30, and of course we see more and more scientific reports suggesting that is not the case, and the majority of people in Canada and the US also feel that is not the case, that the world is not going to be dead of environmental problems in a few years. As a matter of fact, a recent poll shows that only 2% of people actually think it's the most high-risk issue out there today. Having said that, governments that are pressured by non-government organizations and especially pressured by media are going to be very sensitive to this. Politicians wanting to get reelected are in fear and terror of being accused of not caring about the environment unless they go along fully with whatever is going to come out of COP30. But now is the time for your group, your agency, your business, your organization to be doing the hard scientific work, to be making the case that getting rid of all kinds of, let's say, natural gas products, fossil fuel related projects, that'll be the push, that'll be the intent, is in fact not the way to go. And to be considering the fact that countries which are impoverished usually have failing government structures, usually have government policies which don't allow people to flourish, usually have severe left-leaning policies that restrict individuals moving ahead and becoming prosperous. Therefore, they can't take care of themselves. Therefore, they wind up with some of the dirtier fuels around because they can't afford either the refined fuel products or the new movement we're seeing to mini nuclear. So keep an eye on this. and be encouraging your organizations to really be in the media and talking about policies and procedures that actually lead to prosperity in a country, and in fact leads to less emissions, less disease, less problem, less impact on the human condition. And we continually see and know that natural gas, just as one example, refined natural gas, which can get to areas that are having severe emissions problem, let's say because of their dependency on coal, can be helped, and emissions can be reduced, and people can begin to be prosperous in previously impoverished areas. Time to be making the case now on those. It's less than 5 years away, and trust me, if these UN climate policy gatherings or anything like previous ones are going to come out with, unless they're advised otherwise, unless there's evidence that are placed with the contrary, they're going to be coming out with some stuff that's pretty stifling on economic growth and on people being able to move ahead. Talking about strange things happening on the culture front, if you've been watching at all, the series, season 5 coming out, they say it's the final series, final season of Stranger Things. Stranger Things, it's kind of an interesting concept. It's really a story about a small town, and terrible things keep happening underground, and weird things keep coming up from the ground and threatening, if not killing, the kids and the parents. And so the previous 4 seasons have been involved with fighting against these evil forces that are emerging, and mainly it's about kids, but it also shows how they work with their parents to push back the forces of evil. But what's got it interesting is Netflix, of course, which is coming under a fair bit of scrutiny, and seeing people now start to cancel their memberships because of the subject matter that they deal with being so heavy on the woke agenda of things is starting to bother people. And of course, with so many choices in the marketplace, people can vote with their clicks. You used to vote with your feet, now you vote with a click and you go to another movie source. So it's interesting to see that as they roll out the red carpet treatment for season 5, just as we talked about 2 days ago with another famous series where the actors are going at each other in court in vicious ways. So you've got Molly Brown and you've got David Harbour, the 2 stars of Stranger Things, really going after each other in terms of Millie Brown suggesting that David Harbour was involved in bullying on set and in other areas. And so they're using social media to fight their battles, and now these are things that are emerging in court. Very interesting. So Netflix was hoping for a wonderful red carpet finale with season 5, and here you've got the 2 key people involved that are going toe-to-toe as Ariana Grande and Cynthia Erivo are singing their songs about happy days and happy days being here again. Maybe not so much with Stranger Things. On the entertainment and culture front, with the next or the second installment of Wicked, the film Wicked. And those of you who missed it the first time, that's basically an updated version of The Wizard of Oz, but it's from the perspective of the witch. Elphaba is the witch involved here, and her counterpart, of course, all through Wicked, the first one was Glind, and she represents sort of order and safety and security. Elphaba is more representing the resistance and challenging the norms. A lot of concerns coming out from parents because it doesn't just talk about the fact she's a witch, but in fact, Elphaba gets into really talking about how to do witchcraft, how to cast spells, how to very specifically cast spells. And a lot of people are concerned about that. Some people, of course, don't believe in the supernatural. I do, as do millions of others. And I think there's an evil supernatural, and there's also positive aspects of supernatural beings, one, of course, being God himself. C.S. Lewis probably said it best when he said, Satan's greatest trick has been to convince people he doesn't exist. He and his angels don't exist. Anyway, I've just framed for you the argument and the debate that's going on there. Some people are calling it harmless. Some are saying, no, this is dangerous territory to get kids involved in. The group called 1 Million Moms, very concerned about it. And I believe in freedom of speech. I don't think things should necessarily be outlawed. 1 million moms are trying to alert people as to what's going on. And there's even suggestions about subversive approaches to promoting the LGBTQ agenda. People are sort of downplaying that, but it is interesting to see and to note that the original author of this, of Wicked, Gregory Maguire, he himself confirms, he said this very clearly, that he did in fact write the series in such a way that there is a clear subtext of the lesbian attraction between Elphaba and Glyn. Again, that's got people a little bit upset, not too happy about that. And as with so much of entertainment, people raising concerns and getting into some pretty good debates. If you want to avoid all that, you want to check out a film that's just come out. It's called Sarah's Oil. Sarah's Oil, true story about a young African-American woman and her faith, based with some land. This is way back, over 100 years ago. Based with some land she was involved in, which after she acquired it, and I don't want to do a spoiler alert here, but you can Google it anyway, or chat GBT it and find out that land was land in which they discovered massive amounts of oil. And she became the youngest multimillionaire, female youngest multimillionaire. There's a whole faith element involved. Good one to see. So looking for prospects and hoping for your dreams to come true. There's ways in which that might happen. Thanks for joining us today. See you tomorrow.